Today, it's easy to take our current political boundaries for granted. The country is divided into just two nations, England and Scotland, with Wales and Northern Ireland making up the rest of the United Kingdom. But before 1707, when Scotland and England merged to form Great Britain, the island was made up of many more pieces. At the time of William the Conqueror's invasion in 1066, for example, England alone comprised 7 separate kingdoms, but the unification of England was not a new idea at the time of William. Almost 150 years before, a king named Æthelstan had been crowned the first king of all the English. He ruled over a kingdom that stretched from the Scottish border in the north all the way to the English Channel in the south, controlling the majority of the territory that we associate with England today. But the task of unifying England had been a long one, and it almost didn't happen. In fact, Æthelstan almost became a statistic in the infamous Danelaw, a swath of northern England that had been taken by Danish Viking raiders, in which would go through several iterations of being taken, retaken, and split between various Anglo-Saxon kings and Viking warlords throughout the 9th and 10th centuries. Instead, Æthelstan managed to unite the 7 kingdoms of England under his rule, pacified the troublesome Danes, and laid the groundwork for a united Britain. The Anglo-Saxons had been living on the island of Britain since the 5th century, having migrated there from what is now northwest Germany and Denmark. They were divided into several kingdoms: Northumbria, Mercia, East Anglia, Essex, Sussex, Wessex, and Kent, with the last 3 forming the Danelaw, along with the former Viking territories of the Witches and the 5 boroughs. By the 9th century, the Anglo-Saxons were no longer pagan like their ancestors, but Christian, thanks in part to the efforts of the Bishopric of Rochester, which reached back to the Roman mission to Britain in the 2nd century, as well as the arrival of Germanic monks escaping the destruction wrought by the Muslim armies in northern Europe. By then, England was also suffering from raids by the Vikings, who had begun to target the prosperous. Uniting England against the Vikings was an early step towards uniting the kingdoms, though there had been some successes against the invaders. In 866, Egbert of Wessex defeated a Viking fleet at the Battle of the River Carone, which controlled trade through the English Channel, and he would go on to defeat the Vikings again in 878 at the Battle of Edington. This victory established Wessex as dominant over the other Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, even though they weren't exactly eager to be ruled over by one of their own. It was only until 899 that a treaty known as the Treaty of Wedmore formally divided the Danelaw between Egbert's son, Edward the Elder, and the Viking warlord Gu. It wasn't much of a victory, however, and the treaty allowed Guthrum to keep the territory he'd already acquired. Following Edward's death in 924, the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, a collection of annals compiled by monks across England, states that a witan, or assembly, met at a place called Thingmel in Wessex and chose Edward's son, Æthelstan. It doesn't seem likely that any of the other kingdoms willingly submitted to Æthelstan's rule, but the newly crowned king wasted no time in asserting his dominance over the other Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. His first order of business was putting down a rebellion by his brother, Gwefweard, who was killed in battle. Æthelstan then campaigned north into the Danelaw, where he fought against the Viking warlord, Olaf the White, and forced him to submit to Æthelstan's rule. From there, Æthelstan moved further north into Northumbria, where the Anglo-Saxons had never held territory. He pushed all the way to the River Humber before returning south. According to the Chronicle, these campaigns occurred in 925 and 926, but Æthelstan's ambitions didn't end at the Humber. Soon after subduing Northumbria, he turned west to conquer the Kingdom of, which lay along the River Clyde in what is now western Scotland. His objective was the strategically important town of York, which had fallen into the hands of the Scots. Æthelstan besieged the town, forcing the Scots king Owen to flee and submit to Æthelstan's rule. Now, most historians agreed that the Anglo-Saxons did indeed campaign into Scotland, but whether they conquered it is up for debate. The primary source claiming that they did is the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, which makes a rather grandiose claim stating that all the northern part of Britain he subdued under tribute. But the contemporary Welsh writer John of Worcester makes no mention of Æthelstan conquering Scotland, only that he campaigned there. Furthermore, the chronicle is known for its pro-English bias, so it's possible that the claim of conquest is a bit of historical exaggeration. Regardless, the campaigns into Scotland did bring out the Æthelstan's rule all the way to the River Clyde, marking the northernmost extent of his domain. With the rest of England subdued, Æthelstan's final opponent was the Viking warlord Ivar the Bonus, who had seized Northumbria in 927 and declared himself king of the Vikings. He had actually submitted to Æthelstan a few years earlier, but he rebelled when Æthelstan took too long to subdue the Danelaw completely. Ivar called upon the Scots to aid him in his rebellion, but they refused, perhaps because they were still smarting from their defeat at the Battle of Brunanburh in 937, the following year. Æthelstan and Ivar met on the battlefield at the Battle of Winchester, where the English emerged victorious. Though Æthelstan had finally pacified the Danelaw, his work in bringing England together was far from finished. Æthelstan inherited a patchwork of kingdoms from his father, each with its own laws, customs, and coinage. Even after pacifying the Danelaw and conquering Northumbria, the seven kingdoms remained. To unite them under his rule, Æthelstan needed to legitimize his claim to the throne. He accomplished this in part by marrying the daughter of the King of Strathclyde and taking the title of King of the English. He also reformed the English legal system, issuing the first comprehensive set of laws for England, known as the Laws of Æthelstan. He reformed the currency, introducing a new silver penny that was minted in a standard weight and stamped with his personal initials. These reforms helped pave the way for a unified England, laying the groundwork for future monarchs to complete the process. Æthelstan continued to expand his influence beyond England as well, leading a campaign into southeastern France, the old Frankish kingdom that encompassed much of modern France and Germany. There he defeated a coalition of Vikings and Franks at the Battle of the River Weser, securing the English Channel coast from future Viking raids. Æthelstan died in 939, possibly from wounds suffered during the campaign in Francia. He was succeeded by his son Edmund, who continued his father's policy of expansion into northern England, conquering the kingdom of Northumbria in 947 and pushing the Scots back over the River Tweed. Edmund was killed in a hunting accident, or perhaps by Viking assassins, in 946. He was succeeded by Æthelstan's grandson, Adrid, who reigned until 955. Adrid faced constant threats from the Vikings, who ravaged the coasts and even set fire to the city of London in 962. After his brother Edwy took the throne and successfully defended against the Vikings. He died in 966, leaving the throne to his brother Edgar, who is considered by some to be the second king of a unified England, since he ruled over all the territory that Æthelstan had conquered. Edgar successfully kept the Vikings out of England, earning him the title Peaceable. Though Æthelstan didn't live to see the full unification of England, he laid the groundwork for his successors to finish the job. He broke the power of the Vikings both in England and on the continent, pacified the troublesome northern borderlands, and introduced reforms that helped bring the disparate kingdoms together. Without his military victories and administrative reforms, it's unlikely that England would have been able to unite so soon. But Æthelstan's story doesn't end here. In the next video, we'll explore the fascinating legacy of the warrior queen, Boudica, and her fierce resistance to the Roman conquest of Britain. We'll dig deeper into the turbulent history of the Roman occupation and discover how Boudica's legacy has endured for centuries. Don't miss this epic conclusion to the story of Boudica and the fall of Roman Britain. And if you want to learn more about the ancient world, stay tuned for more information.